there is a cost of living problem. And oftentimes that cost of living problem happens in blue states and blue cities. And you have to ask yourself, right, why, right? I am a member of the YIMBY movement, if you've heard about this. Yes, in my backyard. I think one of the things we could do to help alleviate all this is build more housing. And there's so many ways in Denver and in Colorado that we don't build more housing, right?
The first one in my mind is, of course, our urban growth boundaries. 98% of the land that could be developed isn't developed. We're in this huge state, but yet we pack and stack people on top of each other like rats, and we wonder why homes are so expensive.
Density is actually the solution that we're looking for, not urban sprawl. When you have urban sprawl, people are driving more, there's more pollution, less quality of life.
People can afford their first home, and it might be in Parker instead of in downtown.
If you look at European countries, right?
Oh my God, God bless us, the European countries, the beauty of all progressive states.
If you look at Asian countries as well, their city centers are walkable. They're affordable. There's public transit everywhere.
And Japan
lower crime rates.
Japan is the size of Colorado Springs.
Its population, its economy is much larger, right? We can make a better Denver metro area. We can make better downtowns by building more, having better transit. Rarely does this happen that a fascist libertarian agrees with a democratic socialist about this. But I think we should let the market build.
So let's take a look at Colorado from the progressive point of view, what's going to happen here in a couple of years. But first, subscribe and like our channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications. And find the DA podcast on your favorite listening app. Deep Singh Badhesha, where did you buy that fake beard?
I'm very lucky, like all things in life. It was free. It was genetics from my mom and dad.
No, you're progressive. Somebody bought it for you. Obviously taxed somebody and bought it. It's a good-looking beard.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm lucky to have a very Punjabi beard.
Real quickly, what's your job?
So work in campaigns, work in politics, work as a lobbyist at the state capitol.
All right. As a communist?
I would not call myself a communist. I would call myself a progressive, a democratic socialist, someone who's on the left-leaning things. But I do call myself a Democrat. I'm an active member of the Democratic Party here in Colorado.
And like a communist, you just use a lot of words to say communist.
I would say similar as a fascist, you like to put words in other people's mouths. So,
works pretty well.
Excited to be here and have this conversation.
No, thanks for being here. I really wanted to get your sense of time travel. Go ahead a year and a half or so, and we're going to be looking at some pretty incredible races here. We got like 58 guys running for governor on your side, and 2 Republicans now who I don't think either one has a shot. What do you see from your point of view? What are you hearing?
So a lot of folks are jumping in, or at least rumoring around the governor's campaign. Of course, Phil Weiser has already jumped in. A couple other big names are being rumored right now. Of course, Joe Neguse is eyeing it. Senator Michael Bennet came out last Friday.
And said he's
very, very seriously.
Interested, right.
Yeah. Jenna Griswold, of course, I was at a Denver Democratic Party reorganization committee, and Jenna Griswold took the stage, and she gave a really passionate speech as if she was running for something. So clearly, she's either eyeing governor or attorney general. Maybe there'll be some interesting chess moves where if Joe Neguse goes for governor, then also the CD2 seat's open, and Jenna does live up in that seat, so she could run for Congress there.
I see a few things being played here. What about Crow? Is there any talk of?
I would say the most enthusiasm I've heard about Jason Crow is actually from donors and activists in particular. He has been doing a pretty offensive media blitz lately. He's been going viral on social media. He's been doing a lot of interviews on the national news broadcasts. And he is definitely, leaning into, being more of a public figure, both on the national scale and locally. I'm not sure if that's a play for maybe Senate in the future, if he's looking at governor. He is someone who I've heard likes D.C. So unlike a lot of politicians who go to D.C., right, don't like it and are striving to come back, right? Governor Polis is a good example of that. He said he hated D.C. He didn't like to be there. That's one of the reasons why he came back.
Well, especially as a congressman, I can't think of a worse job. You're gone all the time, and you're campaigning, and you're fundraising from day one. Being a senator, I think, would be a pretty choice gig.
Yeah, I mean, the job of Congress in Colorado is pretty tough in terms of, Congressman Brittany Petterson just had a newborn son and had to fly back with that newborn son in order to take a vote. So it's not exactly conducive to a good lifestyle. Joe Neguse has a young family as well. He's in a happy marriage. I could see him definitely wanting to come back to Colorado, run for governor. Michael Bennet, in the same way, he seems like he's fed up with DC politics. He's been a lot more active as well on social media. So I think that might be him also running. The interesting thing about Michael Bennet is if he runs, the last time this happened was in New Jersey, I think in the 2000s, is he would then get to appoint his own replacement.
Are you sure about that? Because if he gave up the seat to run, then Polis would be able to give that seat. If he wins, can he hold both seats long enough to say, I'm no longer senator, I'm going to now appoint my next guy?
I actually posted this on Twitter, or the artist formerly known as Twitter, X, about the last time this actually happened was in New Jersey. So the U.S. Senator for New Jersey ran for governor, won governor, and then resigned as U.S. Senate, and then got to appoint his own replacement. So it would be interesting is Michael Bennet could have had this shadow campaign happening where he's like, hey, maybe if you're supporting me, one of my biggest fans, you might be it. He also might do like a gracious thing where he's like, hey, I'll appoint a placeholder, and then in 2 years from now, someone can run for the open seat. That happened recently in California where Newsom appointed someone who wasn't going to run for re-election.
You could say the same thing happened here with, oh my God, I'm blanking out on his name, before Boebert got the seat. So what about this? Because it's just easy to speculate. Polis becomes the next senator. Should Bennett get it? You think?
Polis is already on a lot of short lists nationally for either president or vice president. Probably not for president, but I think he would be actually a really strong VP pick for Democrats. If you think about it, if you have someone more progressive and left-oriented and win the top of the ticket in 2028, Jared Polis does have this, I'm not sure if you would call it
manufactured image,
a libertarian streak, as people would say it.
Yeah, because the libertarians always raise the minimum wage, take away your gun rights, pushing all sorts of environmental crap. I just get so tired of Jared Polis, the libertarian. That spin machine just doesn't fly anymore.
He is definitely one of the most business-friendly Democrats, I think, that has national recognition. And he is quite independently wealthy.
He destroyed the oil and gas business. He's, because of his husband, destroying ranching. Oh my God, it's only people outside of this state that think he has a libertarian streak.
But if we're talking about Jared Polis' future prospects, right, I think even the reputation he has would make him actually a pretty strong contender for vice president. I think he would rather lean into those conversations than go to the U.S. Senate.
Probably, but I keep thinking about this. What does Vice President Polis get you? It's not like you're not going to get Colorado. I assume in 4 years, Colorado is still a strong D state, and whoever they run will get our 10 electoral votes. So what does he get outside?
So being a vice president, you actually are part of the ticket, so then you can donate to yourself unlimited amounts of money. If you're looking at across the board, you have J.B. Pritzker, who has a lot of independent wealth, and you have Jared Polis with a lot of independent wealth. Both those individuals, either at the top of the ticket or secondary on the ticket, would bring along with them tens of millions of dollars. That's direct hard side money that would be very unique for a candidate. I am on the boat, though, that we probably have too much money in politics as is. Being part of the progressive left, I think we need to get away from that. But Democrats need to play,
And you get that it was campaign finance laws here in Colorado that made Polis, where he could buy his governorship, but anybody running for him had to go out and ask for people $400 at a time. And I love Amendment 27 way back years. I got a sign in my office from it, vote yes sign. It says, get big money out of politics, yes on 27. 27 passed our campaign finance laws. And of course, just like any other plan that's supposed to do something by controlling people, there's more money in campaigns than ever. So I just don't see, I really wonder, particularly on a local level, if the day of working class, middle class politicians is gone. The Bill Owens of the world that could, with hard work, become a governor. I just don't know if it's possible anymore.
I do think Colorado and the Democratic Party has no machine apparatus, right? If you're a rising progressive star or a young Democratic Party activist and you want to run for political office, you actually have to do it bootstraps, right? There's no apparatus where you plug and play and go on to win. You usually, especially on the progressive side, you need to have connections. You need to have a lot of commitments. Charisma is really important on that left. And I think it's almost like the AOC and Bernie Sanders model of things, right? Where you're not going to actually get the large checks from these billionaires that basically, control a lot of the campaign finance. You have to get a lot of small dollar donations or a lot of money from a lot of individuals in order to do it. If you're looking at someone like Javier Mabry, right? If you're looking at someone like even Emily Sirota, these are people who are getting a lot of small donors in order to do things. Manny Rudinell, he's the first person who's jumped in against Congressman Gabe Evans. He raised over $500,000 in the first 48 hours, and that was with thousands and thousands of donations. That's something that the progressive left does, while more of the moderate Democrats oftentimes, they're like, oh, I take no PAC money.
It's also something that a guy like Donald Trump does in spades. But the difference is, whether you're Michael Bloomberg or Pritzker or any of these rich guys who can self-fund, your opponent can't. And therefore, you spend all your time, like Jared Polis, campaigning, whereas your opponent has to spend all their time fundraising and getting $500 at a time or whatever the limit is. The sad part is, even if a rich guy wants to help out that little guy, he can't coordinate. So you've got somebody running a shadow campaign on your behalf who sometimes, most of the time, gets it wrong. So candidates, unless you're wealthy, can't run their own campaign. The IECs and independent expenditure committees and all the other things run a shadow campaign that could be completely against what you want. I think of the advertisement against Hickenlooper when he was running for re-election, when he talked about maybe commuting the death sentence for the Chuck E. Cheese killer. The Republican Governors Association comes swooping in with these ads, which were false. He wasn't going to release the guy. He was going to not kill him. That's a big difference. The commercials didn't hit, but they had this great thing. Now, if whoever was running had the control of that money, that mistake wouldn't be made. I'm just saying campaign finance laws don't work.
I think the thing that we need to tackle is the corruption aspect of it, right? I went to the DNC in Chicago, and it was really interesting to see people take the stage at the DNC, right? People from Colorado, Jason Crow took the stage, Joe Neguse took the stage, and people would take the stage and talk about fighting for the working class, fighting for higher wages, fighting for better healthcare for all, and they would do it under a banner of like United Healthcare, sponsored by United Airlines, right? All these big pharmaceutical companies sponsoring the Democratic Party. So you had this weird thing that's going on that you see at the DNC, where Democrats are saying one thing, and then their donors are saying another thing, right? And I think that actually what's made Colorado more successful than the National Democratic Party is, we don't necessarily see that as much, right? I think our finance laws have done a good job invoking a more progressive activist base here that can get elected, right? That can compete. And, you say it's a bad thing, but I think progressives have made a long headway in
They
Colorado.
made a huge headway here for lots of reasons, including demographic changes, including legal changes, but also because of a lot of money that's spent well on the left compared to a lot of money that is spent so poorly on the right. It's just ignited into flame. Let's get back to making some predictions. So, given who you think is going to run, who becomes our next governor? If you had to put $1 today.
$1 today.
I'm sorry. You're a communist. Let's say it was your dollar, not somebody else's.
I was going to ask everybody here for 25 cents, and we'll put it into a pool and then share.
and then the elite decides where the money goes.
We'll give it to you actually as the white dude, and then you can maybe divvy it out for.
Not bad. I like that. All right. What do you think?
I think right now, if I was a betting man, Michael Bennet has won competitive elections since 2010. He is probably the person with the highest name recognition, right? You probably might even see Ken Salazar jump in, which will be interesting. And if this race is like Ken Salazar versus Michael Bennet versus Phil Weiser, that's a very interesting dynamic that I think Bennet probably will edge out. Mostly because I think Bennet and Salazar would probably cut Phil's base if there is. Phil Weiser, though, did come as an upset win in 2018 when he ran against Joe Salazar for Attorney General, right? He wasn't someone who had like political experience as an elected official, right? He was someone who had cultivated a wide network of folks stemming from his time as a law professor, as a mentor to the legal community. And he is a really like, aggressive campaigner. Like he will go to thousands and thousands of small rooms with 10 or 20 Democrats. And if he can do that enough, and these people are like, hey, he's actually been here for 8 years, maybe he edges out Bennett. But it's hard to imagine. Bennett, going back to finance though, Bennett was the 5th Democrat in terms of the most donations from billionaires. It went like Kamala, Biden, Buttigieg, Booker, and then Michael Bennett had the most donations.
Was
from
this
billionaires.
for his run for president?
For president in 2020. He had 34 billionaires donate to him. So Bennett is going to have a war chest unlike anyone else.
Couple things. There are politicians who love to campaign. I think of Ed Perlmutter, and I think of a guy who just loves to talk to people. You can see that. I don't think Bennett has that. I think Bennett has a distance issue. He's not warm and cuddly. Phil Weiser is. The other part of it is I don't think he has the name recognition you think. 2 people usually get the most recognition in media in Colorado, the governor and the mayor of Denver, and then maybe some other folks. Our federal delegation doesn't make a lot of local news. And so I don't think the Bennett name is as big as you think it would be. I think local politicians have more name recognition. That being the case, I agree. He'd have more money. Do you think Jenna runs for governor?
I think, again, there's some interesting chess in terms of if Michael Bennett's going to really jump in, Jen is going to have this national fundraising base. She's actually the most well-known Democrat in the state. So there's a poll that was done a couple weeks ago. That was Joe Neguse, Ken Salazar, Phil Weiser, and Jenna Griswold. Jenna came up as having the highest favorables and the highest unfavorables. So this is interesting dichotomy is like a lot of people know her, but sometimes more people know her, the more people dislike her. If she jumps in, she will have a national fundraising base and a lot of name recognition. However, she has got into a lot of scandals, right? I think Republicans and the right will attack her nonstop. And there's not necessarily...
Like that matters anymore.
But I don't think there's necessarily anything for the left or progressives or even centrists to grab on. Like, what would a Governor Griswold give them that a Governor Bennett or a Governor Weiser might not? And so she might be looking for this interesting lane where she's like, like the average uninformed Democrat might like her, but is that who's going to show up in June 2026 to vote for this? She's had some rumored troubles with staffing issues. Does that turn off the unions? Right? Does that turn off the progressive organizations who stand up for workers? People say that she might run for attorney general.
Let me ask you this one. As a socialist, who would you like to see as the next governor?
Who would I like to see
out of the people who are playing right now, who are likely, including Bennett.
As a Democratic socialist, I think there's a lot of like really powerful left candidates.
Yeah, that's a wonderful non-answer. So who would you like to see as governor?
I think individually, right now, of the candidates who are rumored and announcing, I think Phil Weiser is a really pragmatist in a lot of ways, and he's one of the few politicians I've interacted with, is when you give him evidence and data, he's like, interesting, and changes his belief. Oftentimes, so many people are dug in to their ideologies, dug into maybe what their donors want, that they don't shift, right? Phil's giving that. Of candidates who are not running, I think there's a lot of amazing people, right? I think someone like Emily Sirota, if she wanted to do it. I think someone like Julie Gonzalez, if she wanted to do it. I don't think these folks really want to do it. I think they like what they're doing right now, want to stay in that lane. But there are folks like that.
All right. So out of the people who are likely to run, Weiser would be your pick.
Yeah.
All right. Trump card. 2 years from now.
Actual Trump card?
No, the figurative Trump card.
Okay, got it.
The Donald Trump effect here in Colorado. It was terrible 4 years ago. It was still bad 2 years ago. It wasn't as bad this time around the last election in 24. In 26, after 2 years of Trump in office, a Democratic-leaning state like Colorado is going to have a reaction. I think it's going to be a tough time for any Republican to win, except in the rural areas in Colorado. I don't see the legislature changing that much, and I don't see any of the 4 state offices switching party. What do I have wrong?
If Donald Trump somehow actually seizes on a mandate that he got from the working class and actually defends the working class, stands up for them, and the working class see their lives get better, right? You could actually see a lot of trouble. That's probably not going to happen.
Colorado isn't a working class. It's not a blue-collar state as much as Michigan or Ohio or other Rust Belt states.
The coalition that Trump got together, right, was, a far-right religious base, the more country club Republicans, but then there was also this newer working class base that voted for him, right? Think about Latino voters, right? If you could somehow seize on that message, having a gubernatorial candidate who did that, and Trump was actually successful, that'd be one thing. I don't think he's going to be successful. The latest tax plan that even Jeff Hurd and Gabe Evans voted for cuts Medicare funding, cuts spending that helps the working class the most, Latino families the most, and gives huge tax breaks to the wealthy. I don't think that's going to go over
huge tax breaks to everyone when you lower tax rates.
But really, a huge tax breaks to the wealthy, right?
The same tax breaks for everybody. When you lower income taxes, we all benefit.
And I think the most unpopular thing he's going to do is he's going to increase prices through tariffs, right? You see Jared Polis, his laser focus on this as well. If we're talking about what's made Colorado politics successful in comparison to Republican politics in Colorado, is that Democrats here do have some message discipline about, hey, we're going to give you something, right? Tabor is not great, but we're going to give you checks with our names on it, right? They're going to be flat. They're not going to be more for the rich and less for the poor. We're going to give you a flat Tabor refund. They're good at messaging.
What you would even admit is a redistribution.
I actually would like to do Robin Hood Tabor. So I've been pushing this thing where actually, if you make under $50K, you get $1,500. You make over $300K, you get $200.
So in other words, redistribution.
I think that's the most effective thing we can do.
You can say the word.
Directly.
Can you say the word redistribution?
I think it's a more fair tax code.
Can you say the word redistribution? That was my question. Can I hear it?
Redistributing what the rich stole.
You couldn't even say it. All right, we'll keep rolling. And by the way, if only Trump labeled these tariffs fees, then Polis could not at all say anything bad about them, because that's how he raises tax money here, by going around the voters and calling them a fee instead of tax, so there's no Tabor vote. So he needs to call those tariffs fees, and then Polis would be dead on. Agreed?
I don't think that would be true. I think Jared Polis is, again, a business-friendly Democrat. He's actually probably, if you look at the Colorado Democratic Party, he's actually probably one of the most centrist members.
But it only tells you how crazy the state has gotten.
I think the thing that Jared Polis gets right is he's someone who looks at the status quo and says things need to change. I think Democrats are the least popular when they're saying the status quo is fine. I think what ran into Kamala and the problem that happened with Kamala Harris when she ran is she literally said nothing will change. And it was a change election. Donald Trump got up there and said these are the problems happening to our nation. I don't agree with any of his solutions.
Not a one?
I'm sure I agree with something on the broad aspect of the thing. I'm kind of an anti-interventionalist when it comes to foreign policy, for example. But when it comes to change, right? If Democrats in Colorado are running, the status quo isn't working for you, let's change it, right? Let's expand universal pre-K. Let's expand full-day kindergarten. Those are big victories that say, hey, Democrats delivered something for you. But if Democrats in the state in 2026 run on, hey, Colorado's hunky-dory, nothing needs to change, that's an opportunity for Republicans to come in.
If only Republicans can get their stuff together. And I'm not certain that they can in this amount of time. Also, Colorado is not a partisan state. It is an unaffiliated state. And I think we are wading into a new political reality in Colorado that both teams don't know how to deal with. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. I really am. I think it's going to be wild years.
Do you know who's the most popular independent politician in the country? No. Bernie Sanders. So yeah, but we are an unaffiliated state, but I think those unaffiliates
are communists?
I think they're someone who wants someone who fights for them. In Bernie, AOC, the left wing of the Democratic Party here in Colorado, those are the people who are protecting their personal liberties that I think you would agree with, and are making sure
they're taking away my gun rights, they're taking away my property, they're taking away my income. No, they're the worst.
the easiest fights that Democrats get stuck into, especially this happens at the national level, whereas they do get stuck into culture war issues instead of kitchen table issues.
Let me get into that one. Trump won, I think, much more than we can quantify based on a reaction to the woke crap. And my supposition is this. When people get an anonymous way to vote on the pronoun police and the woke stuff and the identity politics, we get a sense of what they are. Look at Bud Light that lost 20% of its share. Bud Light didn't do anything wrong. They threw a trans guy some beer. Big deal. They're trying to get a little market share there. Great. But you cannot speak up against wokeness at work. You lose your job. If somebody, they say, no, you got to call that man a she, well, then you got to lie and call that man a she, or you lose your job. Same thing at school. You get kicked out of college. But when they could vote anonymously at the supermarket, you got a sense of where people were. You know what else is anonymous? The voting booth. And I think a lot of men and women's sports, the pronoun police, the they, thems, frustrated so many regular Americans across the board. I think it was a big get for Donald Trump. And the fact that people now can talk about these things openly is because Donald Trump won.
When you look at all the post-election surveys and results that came out, it was a very few number of voters who swung to Trump at the last minute who actually cared about those cultural issues. Most of them were reacting to the economic plight they felt, and then the fact that Democrats felt like they weren't taking those plights seriously, right? Democrats win when we talk about healthcare, when we say the healthcare system is unfair and we need to fix it. When we talk about how you're not being paid enough at your job because your bosses are exploiting you for corporate profits, that's when we win the issues. When we get distracted by other issues that are important and that we should speak about, but if we're not talking about the real economic realities, that's when someone like Donald Trump with a more authoritarian, fascist, populist stream can come in and take the...
My spidey sense here is, yeah, you're right, John. The left has gone way too far in this woke stuff, but I am a progressive consultant. I can't say that.
It's important to acknowledge people's lived identities, right? I'm someone who...
It's also important to recognize science and biological science that if a man is a man, he's a man. There are two sexes with a small, rare genetic abnormalities. There's either XX or XY. And so what I find so crazy is this, we got to follow the science, except him, we're going to call her. It blows people's minds. It is the forced speech that I think is the issue.
Well, about the forced speech, though, if you look at what the Republican Party is doing, not just in the state of Colorado, but nationally, is they've become the speech police, right? There are people like, if you're not towing the line, if you're not saying what we say exactly, you're gone. Right?
You're doing the political spin. There's no Republican Party in Colorado. It doesn't exist.
Of course, Dave Williams is not running for the chair, but there will be another chair of the
Republican but still,
Party.
It's not a force. It's not a force. It'll be years before it is a force, particularly in swing districts. While Trump is president, Republicans are not going to do well there. You might as well have a swastika behind your name if in some of these swing districts. But getting back to the point that people shouldn't be coerced to use language they find a lie.
And again, I don't think this is actually something that the Democratic Party was doing, or at least the progressive.
Really?
And we might have a different...
You want to go to my public schools?
I think we might have a different definition of progressives. Right? When I'm thinking about progressives, right, it's the people on the left who are fighting for union rights, workers' rights. It's people who are fighting for healthcare.
Identity politics pimps who want to put people in boxes based on their genitals, skin color, and what they think their genitals should be.
I think the people who talk about that the most actually are Republicans and far-right commentators, right? When I look at the progressive left, they're trying to be laser focused. Take two of the people on the national scale that talk about this most, Bernie Sanders and AOC. They're laser focused on talking about Medicare for all, right? Laser focused on expanding
You're doing what a consultant does,
access.
which is
let's
bring it over to here. No, I want to land on the cost of wokeness to progressives, because I'm not certain progressives got the lesson nationally. Maybe in Colorado it's still fine, but the overreach and the stifling telling somebody you've got to use these words or you'll be unemployed. Talk about oppression. You want me to lie at work, otherwise I can't feed my kids. That's oppression. The whole DEI thing was so overpushed, but I'm not seeing, at least I'm not hearing it from you, a real thoughtful, you know what, they went too damn far. And if our team doesn't correct it, it could really damage us. Or we should lean into it more.
I will say this. The values that we have, that trans lives matter, that people of color deserve dignity, right?
Everyone deserves dignity.
Exactly. Those are things that we should continue to focus on, right? However, it can't be the focus. The reason why that is more about Democrats' priorities, in my belief, is that's easier pill for like the corporate donors to swallow, right? Corporate donors are like, oh, I can put up a pride flag, I can do like a DEI training, but what I can't do is pay my workers more. What I can't do is Medicare for all. So I think Democrats get into this sticky situation. They're like, okay, let's do the easy things that we can, right, that corporations and our donors are okay with, and not do the hard thing, which is push back and say, no, we need to have a more focus on wages. We need to have a better focus on healthcare. I think one of the things that the Colorado Democratic Party is laser focused on is saying, we're going to save people money. How many times have you heard us say that, right? We're going to save people money.
We're going to save people money by taking more of your money. That's how we're going to save people money.
But it's something that actually sticks, right? Again, this is one of the states that did not have a red wave at all in 2024, right? It was Washington, us, and I think maybe Utah. So there's maybe something to the west there.
Hey, buddy. We were a super minority in the House and no longer a super minority.
Shout out to my Republican friend, Tyler Sandberg, who helped make that happen, right? Got those 3 seats.
It just shows you how left it is when not being in the super minority is considered a victory. And that's the dominance of the left here. Let's move from national stuff to the city. A few weeks ago, the mayor was out on Capitol Hill defending his work with illegals. I'm seeing that Denver's got problems. I'm seeing that the minimum wage is finally being a problem. That I went out for a lunch yesterday, 2 of us, iced tea, 2 salads, and a bowl of soup. Iced tea, 2 salads, bowl of soup.
Was it Steuben's?
No.
Strict down there, yeah.
It was $70. All right. That's going to put these businesses out of business. And so the mayor is saying, well, I got a great idea. We'll just tax people 20% more when they go to a restaurant. That's just such a non-starter to begin with. The city's in trouble. People are leaving. Businesses are leaving. Small businesses are leaving. What's the progressive answer to that?
I think the progressive answer is like we need to get back into a mode of.
And while you're doing that, I'll help you with some thinking juice here.
I think one of the things that progressives need to talk more about is how do we build more, right? When you think about some of the most progressive politicians and Democrats we've had, FDR, someone like JFK, someone like LBJ, right? These are people who are like, yes, we're going to do progressive programs that help the working class, but we're also going to start building infrastructure in America. One of the things that we've forgotten how to do in America is build more. And what is stopping building? You'll hear commentators on the left, right? Like someone like Ezra Klein or Jerusalem Demsis that there is a cost of living problem. And oftentimes that cost of living problem happens in blue states and blue cities. And you have to ask yourself, right, why, right? I am a member of the YIMBY movement, if you've heard about this. Yes, in my backyard. I think one of the things we could do to help alleviate all this is build more housing. And there's so many ways in Denver and in Colorado that we don't build more housing, right?
The first one in my mind is, of course, our urban growth boundaries. 98% of the land that could be developed isn't developed. We're in this huge state, but yet we pack and stack people on top of each other like rats, and we wonder why homes are so expensive.
Density is actually the solution that we're looking for, not urban sprawl. When you have urban sprawl, people are driving more, there's more pollution, less quality of life.
People can afford their first home, and it might be in Parker instead of in downtown.
If you look at European countries, right?
Oh my God, God bless us, the European countries, the beauty of all progressive states.
If you look at Asian countries as well, their city centers are walkable. they're affordable. There's public transit everywhere.
And Japan
lower
has,
crime rates.
Japan is the size of Colorado Springs. You know, that's
Its population, its economy is much larger, right? We can make a better Denver metro area. We can make better downtowns by building more, having better transit.
By the way,
those are challenges that I would say Democrats sway away from.
I don't disagree in that live the way you want to live. What I disagree with is the governmental coercion that I can't build over there, but I have to live on top of each other. We're going to put out bike lanes that nobody uses to make driving so ugly that we're going to put you on a bus by gunpoint. You know, rail numbers are down still, and they still haven't completed it. I was the chairman of RTD. I know what a scam this is.
I did not know you were on RTD. Okay.
I know that if you want to hurt poor people, you push transit, because what it does is it takes money from poor people from regressive sales tax, gives it to yuppies so they don't have to pay parking when they go to a Rockies game. And it takes away choice. So poor people have to live on a bus line, work on a bus line, but a guy with a $500 car has freedom. So if you want to liberate people, don't give them a frickin' bus pass, you give them a car and let them compete, or you give them money and give them the choices.
I think what we would talk about is people need options and people need freedom. Right now, we live in Denver, in the Denver metro area, where you can't build the density that people would probably want. Right?
No, if people wanted, they would, because the market would give them.
But you
what
can't
they
because
want is
the
a
zoning
home.
law, the zoning laws, the height restrictions. I think we might actually have some, like, rarely does this happen that a fascist libertarian agrees with a democratic socialist about this. But I think we should let the market build. We should come in with public housing as well.
How do you feel about the defects legislation, the construction defects that right now trial lawyers are keeping us from building condominiums?
I actually used to live in the Beauvalon. Fun fact. So the Beauvalon is oftentimes. Are you familiar with the Beauvalon?
No.
It's off of 10th and Lincoln. It's at that French-looking building. There's like three French-looking buildings. You drive by it.
Yeah, it looks hoity-toity.
I used to live there. It was actually very cheap rent when I lived there. Everyone kind of blames that for the construction defects lawsuits that happened. I'm not following this issue that closely. I actually think that the things that's stopping us from investing is a lot of checks that we have in place when it comes to can we build a sixplex here? Can we build a fourplex here? Can we build an apartment building here, right? And there's a lot of NIMBYs who stopped that building. One of the things I was actually really passionate about was the development that was going to happen on the Park Hill Golf Course, right? Park Hill Golf Course is an empty, abandoned piece of land, essentially. It was a golf course, a very small one. And a developer had come in and said, hey, we're going to build this. I think up to 30% were going to be affordable housing units. And Denver shot that down when it was up in the ballot, right? I think those are the issues that actually keep housing expensive in Colorado, right? Now that Park Hill Golf Course, Mike says they're going to buy it and turn it into parkland. You know how many people are housed on parkland? 0. If that development happened, you would have hundreds and hundreds of families move in, often at an affordable rate. And so the thing that's stopping us is, I think there is, if we're to talk about Doge, right? I'm sure maybe you're a fan of Doge here. People are angry at government bureaucracy, right? I was talking to a Muslim man who lives up in Thornton in Adams County.
You talk to Muslim men?
I mean, I'm a Sikh Punjabi man.
Oh my God.
They're oftentimes like, yeah. I should introduce you to some people. Their food's delicious. Come with me sometime.
Come with me, my friend.
Yeah. When I was talking to someone in Adams County about this, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about the government overreach that does exist, right? About CIA and FBI invasion into our communities, right? How when you go to the airport, you're standing in a TSA line that doesn't necessarily make sense. You're like, how does this actually keep us safe? There is a lot of government friction in people's lives that get them frustrated, right? And people want a Democratic Party or a progressive party that fixes that, right? If people are saying the status quo is okay, we're not going to win elections. And I think that's another thing that actually leads to Polis's, brand, the Democrats' brand in here, is he's not someone who says government's all okay. He says there are dysfunctional aspects of this, and let's fix it.
We both want cheaper homes. What I get frustrated with is that people who want to centrally plan don't seem to understand, wait a second, you guys are making homes expensive. We live in a vacant state, but we can't build on that. We want to have homes that you cannot have gas heat on. So you have to buy electric appliances. Electric heat is ridiculously expensive. The war on energy in this state is going to bankrupt the state. We're going to have rolling blackouts in years to come, and people will die because people who need their air conditioning or need their heat won't have it. These are dangerous things, and they're not brought on by the market. They're brought on by central planners. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Colorado is going to be tough because as a white guy with a house in Boulder, Boulder's growth control keeps out black guys, and it makes my house worth 5 times what it should be in the marketplace. But yet, everyone in Boulder has one of those Black Lives Matter signs in their yard. Well, Black Lives Matter, would you allow us to build on that open space for homes so that working people, largely people of color, could afford a house? No. So I see a real push.
You're talking like a progressive now, I think. Well, I think I've won you over in this one.
Yeah, bring it over. If you want to get rid of urban growth boundaries, if you want to get rid of the environmental laws that are stopping people from heating their home with natural gas, yeah, we got a lot in common. You want to dismantle transit and give that subsidy directly to poor people and not to wealthy people, man, I am on board with you.
You had me on one of the three. I think having artificial limits on cities that would make it more walkable, more dense, and have better transit, we need to lift those, right?
Better transit is not going to come from government. Government is in the empire building business. That's what I saw at RTD. That's why they like light rail, because nobody can compete with light rail. Compared to a bus lane or a carpool lane where private operators can go on and carpools can go on and school buses can go on and get out of traffic, there is a way to build our infrastructure to reduce traffic if we get the social planners who want empire and get people out of the business. Tracks, steel wheels are there for one reason only. Nobody else can ride on this right-of-way. That's why living up in Boulder, I get to use that bus lane. And it's why we have free-flowing traffic. You live down south, you're screwed because that little bit of right-of-way is for tracks, not for rubber wheels where everyone can play. Uber is the future. RTD is 200, 300-year-old technology. We got to wrap this stuff up.
Okay.
And that's a nice way of saying, I don't want to hear what you say. So go ahead and tell me what you're going to say.
I'll have to bring you to the next EMB meeting to actually.
What?
EMB, yes, in our backyard.
Oh, actually, I would love to do that. So let's make that happen.
Yeah, I think, again, progressives and Democrats win when we talk about the issues that are happening and how to fix them, right? If we become like the National Democratic Party and said everything's hunky-dory, we're not going to win elections. And the problems that you outlined are real problems, right?
But here in Colorado,
people of color,
everything for the last 20, 15 years has been Democrat controlled.
But we're fixing these problems.
That Democrats created.
A lot of these problems, I actually would say, is Tabor created, right?
Because you don't have enough money without.
Or my good friend Michael Fields goes to the ballot every now and then and throws a wrench at the wheels, and we have to fix those things too.
Tabor is merely consent. As a guy who was there at the beginning and helpful with Tabor, it's only about consent. You can make government as large as you want. Just ask us first. What I hate about progressives who hate Tabor, they just don't want to ask. They want to do fees. They want to do certificates of participation so that they don't ask consent. I find that truly insulting to the people you claim you represent.
I think there's a lot of popular parts of Tabor in terms of the consent of the governed. I think that is a popular part. When it comes to the mechanisms of the Tabor cap itself, right?
You can override it. All you need is consent.
I think that's something that we're actually probably going to take a look at in November 2026. So stay tuned for that.
What does that mean?
I think there is a progressive coalition and Democratic coalition coming together to look at what does it look like to do maybe de-Brucing statewide, or even what does it look like to do a progressive income tax.
And we'll be there to fight you every way. Hey, Deep, thank you so much. This is a kick. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds good. Cheers.
All right. Zdrovia.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.